Welcome to Reformed Thinking.
And welcome to the deep dive.
We're the place where we sift through writings and insights, trying to bring you compelling ideas and help you grasp big concepts quickly.
That's the goal.
Today, we're taking a close look at a passage that's, well, short, but incredibly rich. Psalm 13.
Psalm 13, yes.
Now, for listeners maybe less familiar, the Psalms, they're these ancient Hebrew poems, songs, prayers from the Bible.
And they are incredibly honest. Raw, even.
Definitely raw. They cover the whole spectrum of human feeling, don't they? From like the deepest lows to the highest highs.
Absolutely. And Psalm 13 specifically gives us this really vivid picture of finding comfort, finding a real change of heart, right in the middle of serious trouble.
It's often called something like the deserted soul's case and cure, I believe.
That's right. It lays out a very clear path, offering direction, offering encouragement for anyone who's going through a hard time.
So we're going to unpack that today. How David, the psalmist, moves from complaint to prayer and then finally to praise.
Exactly. It's a visible progression. And it gives us some clear guidance for how we might navigate those times when it feels like, well, like God is silent in our own difficulties.
Okay, let's get into it. Section 1 is the lament, David's complaints in verses 1 and 2.
Right. And you have to imagine David here. He's at his absolute lowest point.
This isn't just a bad mood.
No. This is a deep spiritual, emotional crisis.
Yeah.
And he doesn't just, sigh quietly.
He really lets it out.
He unleashes this raw, honest lament, a direct pouring out from the very depths of his being. It's almost startling how intense it is.
And what's interesting is that the Psalms themselves, this tradition, it actually seems to encourage that kind of honesty, doesn't it?
It does. It's like the troubled soul is given full permission. A kind of spiritual freedom of speech, you could say.
To just lay it all out there? Every single grievance?
Before the Lord, yes. At what the old text called the throne of grace.
That phrase, throne of grace, and the freedom of speech there, that seems really key.
It is. It's not just a suggestion. It's presented as permission, almost a right, for the believer to bring their deepest sorrows, their doubts, directly to God.
So it implies God doesn't just know about our pain intellectually.
But that he truly feels it with us, like a parent's heart aching for a hurting child. He gets our human weaknesses, our struggles.
Which must be incredibly comforting when you're in that moment of distress.
It can be. Just voicing the complaints, sharing the grief can bring some ease to a troubled spirit.
Okay, so David's lamenting. He's pouring it all out. What exactly is bothering him so much? Is it just like his circumstances?
It's deeper than just circumstances, though those are part of it. First, he talks about what feels like God pulling away.
Like God's not paying attention.
Or at least not paying good attention. He feels God has totally forgotten him.
Forgotten him, like personally.
Yes, and forgotten the promises he made. The sacred covenant, that binding agreement, and all the loving kindness, that steadfast love shown in the past.
Wow, that's like feeling abandoned by someone who swore they'd always be there.
Precisely. And he also says God has hid his face from him.
What does that mean, hid his face?
It means he lacked that inner sense of God's comfort, the closeness he was used to. And that inner spiritual lack, that emptiness, actually caused him more pain than any outward trouble.
So the internal feeling was worse than the external problems?
For David, in this moment, yes. This feeling of being forgotten, it might sound a bit maybe petulant, driven by fear.
Right.
But it's often excused, forgiven, when it comes from a real high regard for God's favor, a deep desire for it.
It's a perception he might even correct later on.
Exactly. And that feeling, why have you forsaken me? It connects right to Christ's cry on the cross, doesn't it?
It does. That sense of spiritual darkness, longing for God's presence, that's serious.
It is. It's an expression that maybe, on second thought, he might take back. But it comes from that deep longing for God's favor, which God understands and pardons.
It shows God doesn't just dismiss these cries, even if they're a bit flawed in their expression.
Not when they're sincere. So beyond how he perceives God acting or not acting, David also talks about his own inner state.
Okay, what's going on inside him?
He says he was racked with care, just tormented by worry, feeling totally lost, like he had no one to turn to for counsel.
Utterly alone with his problems.
The old texts use the Latin in obs consilii, literally without counsel. Imagine feeling that isolated, that burdened, with absolutely no one for advice.
Just trying to figure things out on his own again and again.
Constantly scheming, trying to find a way out, but nothing works. It just leaves him in this state of constant agitation.
Anxious worries really can be heavy burdens, can't they?
They can, and the texts note that good people sometimes load themselves up with more than they need to, trying to fix things when their efforts aren't helping.
And it wasn't just worry, was it? There was sorrow, too.
Deep sorrow. His heart was overwhelmed with sorrow daily.
Daily. So not just fleeting moments.
No, a steady state of sadness. It consumed his spirit day and night. It wasn't just passing sadness, but a constant disposition towards it, preying on his spirits.
Like a constant background noise of grief.
Yes, every day brought new reasons for grief. Like clouds returning right after the rain, just a constant downpour of difficult feelings.
There's that phrase, the bread of sorrow. What does that mean?
It describes the saints' daily experience sorrow being a constant, daily part of life, like our daily food.
Wow. So intense grief, even persistent grief, isn't necessarily alien to a life of faith.
No, it's not. And it's not automatically a sign of lacking faith either, because even Jesus was called a man of sorrows.
That's a helpful perspective. Now, there was another source of grief for David, wasn't there? His enemies.
Yes, the insolence of his adversaries. Saul, mainly, his big antagonist, but others too.
What were they doing?
They were sort of lording it over him, raised up above him, delighting in his distress, expecting him to completely fail.
Celebrating his pain, basically.
Yes, pleased with his grief, promising themselves they'd triumph over him. Imagine how humiliating that must have felt publicly.
Awful. And for David, this wasn't just personal, right?
No, he saw their triumph as bringing dishonor on God himself, on his power, his promise.
So his suffering wasn't just his own trial.
He saw it as potentially lessening God's glory in the eyes of these enemies. He worried they'd trample on everything sacred.
And this included more than just human enemies.
The struggle involves Satan too, who would be gratified if David fell, who could then say, "See, I have prevailed."
So it adds this whole spiritual dimension. He's pleading partly for God's honor, not just his own relief.
It's a striking way to argue his case, isn't it? Making it about God's reputation.
Definitely. So he lays all this out. God feels distant. He's internally wrecked. His enemies are gloating. And then he asks this question at the end of this section.
Yes, the challenge, how long? How long shall it be thus? And even, shall it be thus forever?
Those aren't polite questions. They sound almost like demands.
They do. A raw, visceral cry about the sheer length of the suffering. It signals his patience isn't just thin, it's almost gone.
He's saying, seriously, God, how much more?
Exactly. And prolonged troubles, they really test patience, often wear it right out.
It's easy when things drag on to think they'll never end.
That's a common temptation, to think it will last always. And that can turn sadness into, well, hopelessness.
So he's desperately seeking some assurance that God will return, that this won't last forever.
Yes, because knowing it won't last forever would make the current pain easier to bear. He wants a timeline, a sign the end is coming.
It really captures that human struggle with long-term suffering, how despondency can creep towards despair.
It's a powerful plea for God to act, and to act soon, to lift this agonizing uncertainty.
Okay, so that's the lament. But the amazing thing about this psalm is where he goes next.
Yes, his complaints don't lead him into total despair. They lead him into prayer.
It's like all that raw honesty becomes the fuel for turning towards God, not away.
That's a critical pivot point in the psalm. And it's a key message, really. We should only voice complaints that are, fitting to bring before God.
Complaints that actually drive us to our knees.
Precisely. Prayer becomes the natural, necessary response to all that inner turmoil and outward distress. It lets us share the trouble with the Lord.
It's not complaining just to complain, but letting the burdens push us towards that throne of grace we talked about.
Knowing that freedom of speech is granted there, you can bring the real issues.
And David gets really specific in his prayer, doesn't he? Verses 3 and 4.
He does. He's not vague. He says, consider my case.
Which sounds like, Lord, really look at me, see the details of what I'm going through.
Understand the anguish behind the words. Then hear my complaints.
Again, stressing that honesty. He wants God to really listen to everything he just poured out.
Yes. And then the most intriguing part, enlighten my eyes.
That phrase always catches me. It's obviously not just about physical sight.
No, not primarily. It has several layers of meaning packed into it.
Okay, what are they?
Well, first, it's a request to strengthen his faith. Faith is often described as the eye of the soul.
The eye of the soul. I like that.
It's what lets you see beyond the immediate, beyond the things you can touch and feel, to anticipate a good outcome.
Which is crucial when you feel like God's hiding his face when everything looks dark.
Exactly. When your spiritual vision gets clouded by sorrow and despair, he's asking for renewed spiritual clarity.
To see God's presence and purpose again, even in the middle of the mess.
Right. To perceive things from God's perspective again.
That makes sense, given his complaints. So spiritual vision. What else?
Secondly, it also means guide my way.
Ah, like practical direction.
Yes. Help me look around and avoid the traps my enemies have set. Remember, he felt without counsel, at his wits' end.
So he needs divine guidance to navigate the dangers, the snares.
Yes, both human and spiritual dangers. Making sure he doesn't just walk into trouble. It's a plea for practical wisdom.
For seeing the path forward when maybe all paths look blocked or risky.
That kind of inner guidance, that quiet leading, can make all the difference when you feel lost and vulnerable.
Okay, spiritual sight, practical guidance. Is there a third layer to enlighten my eyes?
There is, and it's perhaps even deeper. It's about spiritual refreshment,
Refreshment. How so?
a desire for his inner being to be restored. For that cloud of melancholy he mentioned to finally lift.
Ah, like letting the light back in.
Exactly. He wants his spirit infused with the happiness of God's salvation, like how fresh air and light can physically invigorate you after being cooped up.
So just as physical refreshment can make your eyes seem brighter.
The joy of God's salvation can scatter the spiritual gloom, restore vibrancy and peace to the soul.
It's a plea for joy to break through the sorrow so his face can look pleasant again.
Yes, it's a comprehensive request. Strengthen my faith, guide my path, and refresh my soul with joy.
Powerful stuff. And then he backs up these requests with arguments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reasons why God should act quickly.
He does. First, notice how he addresses God. O Lord, my God.
Highlighting that personal relationship.
Yes, it's intimate. It's not a distant plea. It's a cry from a child to their father, leaning on that covenant relationship, his personal connection to God.
Appealing to that established bond, not just God, but my God.
Exactly. Then he points out the extreme danger he's in.
This is where he says he might die.
Lest I sleep the sleep of death. He's stressing that nothing is more deadly to the soul than lacking God's favor, and nothing more life-giving than its return.
The absence of God's favor feels like a kind of spiritual death to him.
It's a weight he feels he can't live under. It underscores the urgency he needs relief, and he needs it fast.
He's basically saying, this is life or death for my soul, Lord.
Pretty much. And he doesn't stop there. He also pleads based on God's own honor.
Right, bringing the enemies back in.
Arguing that if he falls, his enemies Saul, Satan, all of them, they'll triumph and boast, I have prevailed.
Which would bring disgrace on God himself.
That's his argument. It shows his concern goes beyond just himself. It's about God's glory, God's reputation.
That seems like a very fitting plea for a believer to make, appealing to God's own character.
It is. He's saying, Lord, if I go down, your enemies claim victory not just over me, but over you. Over your power, your promises. They'll trample on all that you represent.
It really highlights the spiritual battle involved and how a believer's situation can reflect on God's standing in the world.
Yes, their fall would gratify the pride and malice of God's adversaries. It's a plea that really aims for the heart of God's character.
Okay, so he's made his case, poured out his heart, pleaded urgently. And then, section 3, verses 5 and 6, something changes dramatically.
It really does. It's a sudden, almost jarring shift, isn't it?
Yeah, the intense lament, the desperate cries, they just switch almost instantly into these declarations of confident praise. How does that happen so fast?
It feels like we've just witnessed an internal transformation.
A result of the prayer.
That's how it's presented. This dramatic turn from being sad, ready to give up, to rejoicing in God, full of praise. It shows the effect of faith, the effect of prayer.
It really illustrates that idea of how good it is to draw near to God.
Absolutely. If we bring our worries, our troubles to that throne of grace and actually leave them there,
we can go away changed.
We can go away like Hannah in the scriptures. Remember her? Her face was no longer sad. This isn't always a slow process. Sometimes it's an immediate result of seeking God sincerely, a spiritual lightening of the load.
So how does David build this newfound comfort? What's the foundation?
It's built on a clear method, starting with God's kindness, his loving kindness, his mercy as the support for his faith.
So even though his situation looks bleak,
he finds his footing in God's endless goodness. He trusts God's kindness, even though he knows he hasn't earned it, has no merit himself.
That sounds very much like a core Reformed idea, salvation, comfort, based on God's grace alone, not our works.
It is. Recognizing God's goodness is freely given, a gift, not something we achieve.
And he draws on past experience too, doesn't he?
He does. He recalls that in previous troubles, trusting God's kindness never let him down. It always brought help. It held him up back then.
That memory must be vital here.
It is. Even now, in the depths, when God seemed distant, when there were external fights and internal fears, his trust in God's kindness acted like an anchor in the storm,
Holding him steady.
keeping him from being completely capsized even while he was being tossed around. He continued to trust in God's kindness, referring himself to it, sure it would work out well for him in the end.
That steadfast trust is what gives real stability to the soul, isn't it? A quiet assurance underneath the chaos.
It's not about ignoring the storm, but knowing something firm is holding you through it.
And this trust in God's kindness, it then fills his heart with happiness.
Yes, the happiness of God's salvation. It wasn't just thinking God is kind. It was an internal overflow of joy, a happiness that pushed out the daily sorrow he felt before.
Happiness and peace come through believing then.
That's what the text suggests. Even though weeping might last for a night, or even many nights, joy will return. He becomes certain that his heart, which had been grieving daily, would rejoice in that salvation.
So joy is presented as a fruit of faith, a peace that comes from being sure of God's saving work even before you fully see it.
Yes, the ancient text explicitly link them. Joy and peace come by believing, and believing, you rejoice. It's a deep, settled gladness, not just dependent on circumstances.
And this inner happiness, it doesn't stay inside.
No, it fills his mouth with songs of praise. I will sing unto the Lord.
It's a beautiful progression, isn't it? From the heart's conviction to the voice's expression.
The inner gladness is just that could come out. It spills into song.
And this praise, it looks in two directions, right?
It does. It looks backward and forward.
How so?
He sings, remembering what God had done before. He acknowledges God had dealt bountifully with him in the past.
Grateful for past mercies.
Yes, saying even if he never got back the peace he once knew, he'd still bless God for having had it. That shows real gratitude.
And looking forward.
He also sings expecting what God will do for him eventually. He's confident it will all end well, everlastingly well.
His focus shifts from the immediate darkness to that brighter future he believes God will bring.
Exactly. And his confidence is so strong. Listen to this. He talks about God having dealt bountifully with him as if it's already happened.
In the past tense, even though he's still in the midst of trouble.
Yes, because by faith, he had received the promise of that salvation. He was as certain of it as if it were already accomplished.
Wow, that's a powerful statement of belief. Faith, making the future feel present, making the unseen real.
It truly is. It shows the certainty faith can bring. He had received what you might call the earnest to salvation, like a down payment, a guarantee.
Which made a future reality feel as good as done.
That's the essence of faith described elsewhere. The assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen.
It's not just wishful thinking.
No, it's a settled conviction, rooted in God's unchanging character and his promises. It makes the future blessings feel as concrete as past experiences.
What a path Psalm 13 takes us on.
It really is something. From those depths of distress, the questioning.
Through that honest, earnest prayer.
All the way to this high point of confident praise.
It's quite a picture of the Christian experience for many, I think. Showing how even a soul feeling utterly deserted can find its way back to God's comfort.
And it offers really practical lessons for us today.
How so?
Well, if you're listening and you don't share David's specific complaints right now, the psalm encourages gratitude. Give thanks for the peace you have.
And if you do resonate with those complaints,
Then maybe consider what it means when God feels distant or quiet, and seek to, understand and share the experiences of others who are troubled in mind.
but the main thing is,
Let this psalm encourage you in your own faith and in the happiness that can come from it. It really does provide a kind of blueprint for the deserted soul's case and cure.
showing that turning towards God, drawing near to Him, is always good, no matter how deep the sorrow feels.
His suffering, David's suffering, though it started with complaints and feeling abandoned, it actually became the catalyst for deeper prayer and a stronger reliance on God's mercy.
It shows that even in those moments where you feel most alone, there's a path back, a path to hope and praise.
Indeed.
So maybe a thought to ponder as you go about your day. How might leaning into your deepest, most honest feelings, even the difficult ones, and bringing them directly to something bigger than yourself, how might that be the very first step towards finding your own path to peace?
A great question to reflect on.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.